investigating this case. Again, I want to thank DPS and also FBI who couldn't stand with us today for their portions and help in the investigation. The district attorney will provide details on the grand jury process and decisions, and then our homicide investigators will follow to give an overview of the investigation. We ask that all questions are held until the end. Thank you. DA?
Thank you, Chief Finner. I want to begin by offering my condolences and that of every member of my staff at the Harris County District Attorney's Office to the 10 families of the individuals who were killed at the Travis Scott Astroworld concert. I'm Kim Ogg. I'm the Harris County District Attorney, and I'm Harris County's top law enforcement officials. Today, a Harris County grand jury no-billed Brent Silberstein, John Junell, Shauna Boardman, Emily Ockenden, Seth Boardman, and Jacques Webster II, aka Travis Scott, on all criminal charges related to the deaths of 10 spectators of his concert, of the Travis Scott Astroworld concert, 2 of whom were under the age of 15, and the majority of whom were young adults. The grand jury presentation by our prosecutors this week is a culmination of 19 months of Houston Police Department investigative work with lead officers Joshua Caton and Michael Barrow. And I want to thank these 2 investigators who I've seen since the very beginning, doing nothing but this investigation, working with our prosecutors, tracking down every possible piece of relevant information and evidence as part of their investigation. And our prosecutors, I want to thank Alicia Harvey and Michael Levine, along with numerous other lawyers from our office who provided legal support to the investigators to write subpoenas, to offer counsel, to sit with these investigators and review thousands and thousands of hours of digital evidence, review witnesses' statements, review time and chronology reports, everything, so that we could get to the heart of the question. Our jurisdiction as the police chief, as the police department, and me as the district attorney representing our office, our job is narrow. It's to determine if this tragedy, this absolute disastrous, horrific event involved criminal activity by anyone, at the top, to the bottom, or in between. And it's our policy when we have incidents and horrible things like this happen and we aren't clear as to whether a crime has occurred or not, because it's unclear from its face. It was a lawful concert. It was a entertainment event where people died. And when that happens, it's our practice at the Harris County DA's office to take these cases before grand juries. And we do that because grand jury review is required in every single felony case in America. It's a constitutional right, which makes it a prosecutorial obligation. We take these cases to the grand jury only after police have concluded their investigation. In this instance, it took months. As these cases are presented to a grand jury, I need you to understand that in Texas, our grand juries aren't the product of some special selection process. They are now selected at random. Why is this relevant? Because these grand jurors are your neighbors. They are the residents of Harris County. They are ordinary people, here to do a very serious job, just like the rest of us. Determine whether there's enough evidence to say that a crime happened. Just probable cause, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but just did a crime happen? Is there probable cause to believe that a crime happened? In this instance, the grand jury of the 228th District Court of Harris County found that no crime did occur, that no single individual was criminally responsible. In this case, which we handled like we would any other situation of this gravity, it is our prosecutor's job not to go in and get a result that's preconceived by these investigators. The responsibility of determining probable cause by our Constitution is on the people. And that's why this randomly selected grand jury of ordinary Harris County residents is so important for you to understand, because they determined the conclusion and the outcome in this very narrow criminal review. What will happen in courts where they practice civil law, other types of law, administrative law, is not for us to determine. But in our narrow review, our investigators and prosecutors gave it everything they had to ensure that the grand jury could reach the truth of the matter. And that is our job, to find justice even when and in the midst of a terrible tragedy. And in this case, that justice was no bill.
Thank you. Now I'd like to bring up lead investigators Caden and Barrow.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Detective Mike Barrow with the Houston Police Department Homicide Division. And like has already been expressed, our thoughts and prayers have been with the family and the victims that have lost their lives in this tragedy since the very first day we received this case on November 5th. I'd also like to express my gratitude to my partner, Detective Caden. He's a fantastic partner. We've been through a long journey in this 19-month-long investigation, nearly 2 years, of going through a tremendous amount of evidence, hours and hours of video and interviews of witnesses and people who participated in this event. I'd also like to express gratitude to the District Attorney's Office, to our command staff, and to our law enforcement partners that assisted us with this investigation. It's been a long process, and just to explain a little bit more into detail of that, we're going to provide a few insights into that investigation today. First and foremost, it's difficult to condense a nearly two-year investigation into just a couple of minutes that we have to spend with you today. But we're going to provide you those details and insights. And our focus has been and was for the entire duration of the investigation on those 10 deaths of those individuals. We learned, as you all learned, that those deaths were caused and declared by the Harris County Institute of Forensic Science, death by compression asphyxia, with the manner being ruled an accident. We come before you today with a thorough and complete investigation of these last 2 years of reviewing all those details. So today, without further ado, we're going to show you a few presentations to give you a few of those key facts and insights that we uncovered during this investigation. Please hold your questions till the very end. So, as we went through this, much of our investigation focused on the main stage area. This area, this little cross here, that is where the main stage where Travis Scott, the headliner performer on this stage, performed. We broke up this into sections. We have Quadrant 1, which is General Admission, VIP Quadrant 2, General Admission Quadrant 4, and General Admission Quadrant 3, with a center chute going down the middle and another that crosses over it. Back here we have a media section reserved only for cameramen and people operating camera equipment. And then there's a viewing field and overflow field for all the other concert attendees who were not able to get to the front. There's also a wheelchair access ramp, house where a lot of the media and the sound and the special effects were operated from, and a variety of other areas. our attention further focused into General Mission Quadrant 3. This is where we determined after video review of our and witness statements that all 10 deaths occurred within this quadrant. There you have the square footage of that quadrant and the surrounding areas. But our focus honed in on this quadrant for a variety of reasons. One of the key contributing factors to the deaths was the overpopulation and resulting compaction in this quadrant, or Quadrant 3. Just to be clear, this was not a crowd stampede. This was not a stage rush. This was not a crowd surge. This was a slow compaction or constriction into this quadrant, resulting in collapses within the crowd that covered a very small area in this overall large footprint. One of the key causes for that compaction we've determined was in the early hours prior to the show even beginning. Prior to the Travis Scott show, which was set to go on at 9 o'clock, we have there 9:02 is when he officially started. Prior to that, hours before that, a large gathering of participants and concert goers were already in place at stage 1 in all different quadrants. So it was very loaded, very packed, very anticipated event to see the lead performer. Everyone was already present. Meanwhile, stage 2, down here at the bottom of the screen, at 8:42 hours, SZA was the last show at that concert. This then resulted in the remaining participants in this show to move across this area and over into the viewing area that was already held with people. At which point this area became even more crowded, leading to further compaction. Now, let me also remind you with a disclaimer. My partner and I, we are not crowd science experts, but during the course of this investigation, we have obtained knowledge and understanding and key terminology that helps us explain and put to words what we were observing through all the footage that we reviewed and all the statements that we received. One of those terms include things like shock waves, which can be defined as areas in the crowd that move involuntarily like waves. And this is an indicator that there are too many people occupying that space. We also use the term often in this investigation, crowd pockets, not to be confused with mosh pits, which is common for this type of performance. A crowd pocket is an area where the crowd has succumbed to pressure, leading to an isolated collapses within the crowd. I'll now demonstrate in a quick video clip what a surge shock wave looks like. This is before the show even began. This is in the General Mittens Quadrant 1. Nobody died in this area, but this is just to demonstrate what was going on in certain areas of the concert. Here we have what we call crowd pockets. You might be able to see, it's kind of hard to distinguish. There are dark circles, and those are not mosh pits. Those are, in fact, areas where crowds have collapsed in on each other. And also note that even mere feet away, concert goers were not able to distinguish what was happening at their feet. These are very isolated pockets throughout the crowd within that General Missions Quadrant 3. Here's to show you a few vantage points. This is long after the event took place. This is a vantage point from the stage. You'll see here, this is General Mittens Quadrant 3, where the deaths occurred. And this is Quadrant 4. Again, a closer up of General Mittens Quadrant 3. Here's the night of the show, perspective from the stage looking out over into that crowd with all the lights and all the smoke and everything going on. This is what perhaps a performer like such as Travis Scott would have seen that evening. Here's the perspective and vantage point if you were on the ground walking into the main chute of the pits in between those general mission quadrants. This is that main chute where medical and the cameramen and officers and security were able to go across. Also very crowded. And again, here is what the perspective would be if you're a concert goer with your head just above the crowd. just looking out over into the sea of people that were at this concert. I'm going to turn the time over to my partner, Detective Caden, to explain this timeline synopsis.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Detective Caden with the Houston Police Department's Homicide Division. Detective Barrow here is my partner. I just wanted to, before I go through this timeline and read it off to everybody, I'd like to thank you for everyone coming here this afternoon. This timeline is just a snapshot of what we have. This timeline is multiple pages long. It could take us a long time to get through everything. So these are some of the key points that we wanted to label. At 2 p.m., the festival officially opens on November 5th, 2021. At 8:42, the Scissors Show ends at Stage 2. At 9:02 p.m., the Travis Scott performance begins at Stage 1. 9:07 p.m., first 911 call received referencing distress in the crowd. At 9:18, group jumps fence on McNee and command post received reports of injury at that location, which created distractions regarding incident response. At 9:30, HPD receives reports of multiple people entering the medical tent and multiple people passed out at the front of stage. At 9:32, concert attendees climb a camera platform to try to stop the show. At 9:38, HFD initiates an ambulance task force. The first victim is transported to the hospital from the medical tent. 9:39, HPD officially notified of victims receiving CPR and begin the show stop procedure. At 9:47, Set Track declared a mass casualty incident. And at 10:12, the show ends. This concludes our presentation.
It's okay. Take your time. Again, I want to thank y'all for just an outstanding work, and I know it's been tough. I just want to thank and also our ADAs. Thank you. Now that you've just heard a brief overview of the findings, this incident was very complex, involved multiple entities. The offensive report alone was over 1,000 pages. In coming weeks, and in the interest of transparency, HPD will release the entire criminal offense report. That is unprecedented. And why? We want to be transparent. And you can't stand up here in 2 minutes and tell everything that happened. So to the families, first of all and most importantly, but to the public and everybody else, you can read it and see the challenges that everybody faced that night. Since the tragedy, HPD and other partners have taken steps to enhance public safety at future events. NRG Park is a Harris County-owned facility that operates within the city of Houston. Mayor Turner created a special events task force to improve communication and public safety efforts. This resulted in an interlocal agreement that was detailed in the press conference back in November 2022. The agreement was implemented during Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, as well as NCAA Final Four and other events, and all other events moving forward. Now we have mandatory and elevated platform viewing positions. These will be staffed and have been staffed by HPD officials, HFD officials, and also production with authority to stop a show. We have enhanced communication between dispatchers and officers in the field during events. No longer will dispatcher or anybody else be able to duplicate calls, and we call it dupe calls. And what that means is If you have something at one location, as additional calls come in and they stack, you put them up under one incident, one case number. No longer. You have to call that out. You can't just dupe it. You got to voice it out. Very importantly, we have equipped all personnel working these events with additional noise reduction communication equipment, headphones. That will allow public safety personnel and officials to hear emergency communication better during concerts. We also trained HFD, HPD, and other public safety officials in crowd management training. Before we entertain questions, I want to bring up Commander Garcia to translate in Spanish, and then we'll entertain questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Tenemos presentes al jefe de la policía, Troy Finner, la fiscal del distrito del condado de Harris, Kim Ogg, a un mayor del Departamento de Seguridad Pública del Estado, Kyle Matheson, y a los investigadores de homicidios, Joshua Caton y Michael Barrow. Estamos aquí para hablar sobre la investigación criminal y la decisión del gran jurado sobre la tragedia que sucedió el 5 de noviembre, conocida como Astroworld, 5 de noviembre del 2021. Como acabamos de escuchar, la procuradora nos acaba de informar que el gran jurado ha decidido no levantarle cargos a ningún individuo en este caso. La semana pasada concluimos nuestra extensa investigación criminal. Luego, la oficina del fiscal lo presentó a un gran jurado del condado de Harris. Sobre todo, recordamos a las 10 víctimas y a sus familias que trágicamente perdieron la vida esa noche y a otras víctimas que resultaron heridas. Le pedimos que los mantengan a ellos y a sus familias en sus oraciones. Reconocemos los esfuerzos del equipo de detectives de homicidios que trabajaron incansablemente. Investigaron este caso. También queremos agradecer al Departamento de Seguridad Pública Estatal y al FBI que ayudaron en partes de esta investigación. Como acabamos de escuchar, los detectives nos dijeron que, según el médico forense, las 10 víctimas murieron de asfixia por comprensión y las muertes se catalogaron como un accidente. Acaban de escuchar una breve descripción general de los hallazgos. Este incidente fue muy complejo, involucró varias entidades y el reporte del delito por sí solo contiene más de 1000 páginas. En el espíritu de transparencia, durante las próximas semanas se publicará el informe de reporte completo de esta investigación criminal. Desde el día de la tragedia, el Departamento de Policías y otras agencias han tomado medidas para mejorar la seguridad pública en eventos futuros. El complejo conocido como NRG Park es una instalación propiedad del condado de Harris que opera dentro de la ciudad de Houston. El alcalde Turner creó un grupo de trabajo de eventos especiales para mejorar los esfuerzos de comunicación y seguridad pública. Esto resultó en un acuerdo interlocal que se detalló en conferencia de prensa en noviembre del 2022. El acuerdo se implementó durante el rodeo de Houston y la final del torneo de básquetbol colegial y todos los eventos que se llevaron a cabo en el parque NRG. Ahora tenemos puestos de observación obligatorios en plataformas elevadas para vigilancia. Estos están atendidos por personal de producción y seguridad pública con la autoridad de suspender los espectáculos. Hemos mejorado la comunicación entre los despachadores y los policías en el campo durante eventos grandes. Y ya no duplicaremos llamadas al 911 en un incidente principal. Hemos equipado al personal que trabaja en estos eventos con equipos adicionales de comunicación para la reducción de ruido, que permitirán que el personal de seguridad pública escuche mejor las comunicaciones de emergencia durante los conciertos ruidosos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
We will entertain questions. Go ahead, sir.
Jason
Yes.
Warren with KPRC. For the officers that were demoted during this investigation, will they be reinstated to their previous positions, or are those internal affairs still investigations?
As the chief of police, I have to constantly evaluate things and position our team, especially at the top, the very top, to serve our public, serve our agency. And part of that is promotions as well as demotions, and I'll continue to do that. Okay? Yes.
Hi, Rosa Flores with CNN. One of the things that a lot of the victims' families had difficulty reconciling was in the timeline how the concert was allowed to continue. And in the timeline that was just mentioned, for example, it was deemed a mass casualty event in 9:47. The concert didn't end until 10:12. So where is there no criminal activity in the idea that a concert is allowed to continue when people are dying?
First of all, I'm going to respect the grand jury's decision, and our DA explained that. But also, it's a very complex investigation, a lot of moving parts. And that's why I decided, and I called Mayor Turner, spoke to him directly, and I said, Mayor, with this one, and it's unprecedented, like I said, we have to put it out there. People have to dig in to, it's maybe almost 1,200 pages. Looking at and determine it's important, and especially for the families. They have been waiting for 1 year and 7 months, and that's who my heart goes out to. But also everybody else that's involved, and the chief's opinion, and nobody else's opinion. It really doesn't matter right now. I want to show love and support to those families. We do all understand that it's a civil process that has to take place, and that's independent of us. But I'm going to respect that. But I want everybody to dig in. It's a thick book, and I get it. I understand it. So, okay.
Chief, earlier today, Travis Scott's attorney said HPD had the chance to stop the concert and they didn't. Do you have a response to that?
It's exactly the same. The chief of police is not going to get up here and point fingers at anybody or say, I respect the grand jury's decision again. I simply want people to read it. Read the entire investigation, and everybody will see. Very, very complicated, very difficult.
When will this report be available?
Well, look, you know, we have to, we are the police department. We have to abide by the law. So there are some redactions. As soon as we get that done, and that process is starting today, it's a thick investigation. As soon as we get that done, we'll work out a process to get it out. But I promise you it's coming out to everybody.
Chief,
Yes.
this is from the investigation. Did y'all have like an overall conclusion or like a summary of this, after spending 19 months on this, what was the overall conclusion the investigators came up? They talked about the details, but I don't know if I got a sense as to what the overall conclusion was of the investigation.
The overall conclusion is when it landed in the grand jury's hand and they made their decision. So again, yeah, that's our perspective, and I'm going to stand strong on one thing very respectfully, and I understand everybody's questions. Not going to get opinions from me. No opinions. Not going to hurt the families. And let it go where it needs to go. But we're going to put it out there. So it's no need. And I'm so proud of this as a city, as a department. We're putting everything out there. When have you ever heard that? I hadn't. Okay?
How would you summarize the report
Go ahead.
then?
Summarizing the report, I'm going to leave that up to everybody when you read it. It's important.
Chief, can you explain the stop show procedure?
What stop show procedure?
Well,
Is it?
I mean,
Yeah.
on the presentation, it said the show was stopped. So what was the procedure?
to when you stop it, you everything is in, all music and everything. But that is a part of what you guys are going to read about, and I'm telling you, it's not an easy answer. It's not. Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Go ahead.
Obviously, something went wrong here, right? Obviously, maybe not criminal. Would you guys say that it's the size of the crowd, the layout of the stages?
Multitude of factors. Multitude of factors. And again, that's why I want it out there. And it's going to get out there. Yes. Hold up. Let me finish up.
Do you think that it will be blatantly obvious to the average person who's not a crowd expert or not with the police department when they...
I don't think it's going to be blatantly obvious to anybody. I think it's very complicated, but I think that it's good that we're transparent, and you can't, even me standing up here right now, our investigators, the DAs, the ADAs, you cannot give justice to something that this is complicated just by standing up, because we're not going to answer all the questions. And that's why I want it out there, and it will come out. Yes? Yes.
Give me information of what the possible charges that the grand jury could have considered in this case?
Sure. I've talked with our prosecutors about that, and I'd like to ask Alicia Harvey to answer that question. She cannot reveal what we say to the grand jurors, who we present, the evidence, etc. But the range of charges she can talk about. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alicia Harvey. I'm an assistant district attorney. I am the division chief of case development. In any investigation where you have people who are dead, right? And in this case, we don't have any sort of an intentional killing. So murder immediately, that's not a consideration. But you do, as an ADA, when you're looking at folks who are deceased, you're looking at the charges generally of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. However, in order to sustain one of those charges in front of a jury, there has to be an act, and that act has to have both a culpable mental state, and it also has to have causation. You have to have a person who commits an act that leads to the result. You cannot commit manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide by omission. So therefore, when we're talking about things like stage design, you can't design a stage in such a way that it causes someone's death. It's not gonna, the facts aren't going to fit that way. So when we realized in the investigation that there was unlikely to be a voluntary act by any one person or a group of parties of people in terms of manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide, we started looking at crimes that you can commit by omission. And realistically, the only crime that you can commit by omission that even remotely fits these facts is the crime of endangering a child. And in this particular case, we would need an omission that was committed at the time that the danger to the children, the two folks who were killed who were under 14, at the time that the danger to those two children was imminent, which leaves us with a very narrow window. And the grand jury heard the facts, and when we talk about acts and omissions and causation and necessary culpable mental states, when you talk about whether or not a person knew that danger was forthcoming and whether they consciously disregarded that danger, versus perhaps someone ought to have known that the danger was coming. And then was their failure to perceive that danger, was that a gross deviation for them to not have seen that danger? And those are all of the overarching legal issues that really presented itself in this case. And DA Ogg gathered our best and brightest together to brainstorm this issue to see if there was any way to make the criminal law fit the facts as we have them. And we presented those facts, what could and could not be done to the grand jury, and the grand jury rendered its decision.
And I'll just conclude by saying we have relief under different types of law. The criminal review is really narrow. You have to have a person, a target, you have to have a specific act, and you have to have intent of some type. And so our review, while the investigation was very lengthy, the review of the law was challenging and narrow. And we were just trying to present to a grand jury to determine probable cause, a much lower standard than the trial standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And when prosecutors present a case to a grand jury for probable cause and get a no bill, there's just no way that a trial jury will never hear the case. But the presumption is if you can't meet the lower standard, you certainly can't meet proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Chief, what do you say to the families of these 10 people that passed away that were probably hoping and wishing and praying that there would be somebody criminally responsible for this?
I just want to say to them, and I hadn't been able to talk to them personally, and I'm the kind of chief that I reach out to people, but because of the civil and the way things happen, you can't talk directly to them. I just pray for strength through it all. This is a long, stretched out process, but we all, even the family of victims, we all have to respect our criminal process. I do want to say this, the ADAs that's here present and our investigators have been in this for 1 year and 7 months, but more importantly, their morning started early, presenting before the grand jury. I know they're tired. We're going to take a few more questions and we're going to let them break and get some rest, okay?
Yeah, can I ask you a question? I understand justice and how justice has come out in this case, but is this the result that your office really wants?
You know, what we want, just like laws that we like or dislike, is not the standard for being a prosecutor in Texas or in America. We're bound to the evidence. We apply the law to the evidence. We respect juries' verdicts, whether they're grand jury verdicts or trial jury verdicts. So I want peace for those families, whether criminal charges, whether civil liability and money damages, whether administrative help brings those families justice. I just hope they achieve some kind of resolution that they can move forward with. The criminal cases are never sufficient to bring anyone back. It's simply to hold somebody criminally accountable. And if they're not criminally accountable, then the next question will be, are they civilly accountable? Are they accountable under some kind of administrative regulations? And that's other people's jobs, other people's businesses. But yes, I think we achieve justice when we get to the truth of the matter and a grand jury finds no probable cause that a single person committed an action that caused the death of these individuals, then yes, that's the conclusion. And there's really, when it comes to death, there's no desired result other than what I've said, that we get to the truth of the matter.
All right.
When you look at the timeline, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
When you look at the timeline, at 9:30, it says HPD receives reports of multiple people in the medical tent. If the concert had stopped then, would lives have been saved, or did those people die after 9:30?
I'm not going to speculate on it. I don't know, and it's complicated again. I'm going to refer us back to when we release it. Everybody's going to have to read it again. And final statement from me. So complicated, and y'all, when you read it and you open it up, you're going to have some appreciation of what I'm saying right now. But most importantly, pray for these families. This is Houston, Harris County, and we take pride in our city and everything we do. The Houston Police Department, the DA's office, and no matter what, the resolution at the end, we all are feeling really bad for the families, and we want to do everything we can to get them to some sense of closure, some sense of peace. And however we get there, we're going to get there, and we're going to pray our way there. I know that. So thank y'all.